Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are unpacking the absolutely surreal dual life of NFL superstar George Kittle. We're going to use his recent interviews to really show you how he manages to balance a life filled with A-list celebrity encounters alongside the fiercely gritty, bone-crunching reality of being a tight end in the National Football League. Okay, so let's dive right into this. Because, when we think about professional athletes, we so often just compartmentalize them in our heads, right? We see them out there on the field on Sundays, wrapped in all that armor, colliding with each other at high speeds, and we just think of them as these modern-day gladiators. But there's a whole other universe these guys occupy, especially when they reach the upper echelon of the cultural zeitgeist. And honestly, George Kittle is the absolute perfect case study for this. On one hand, you have a guy who's literally rubbing elbows with the biggest movie stars on the planet, and then on the exact other hand, you have a guy whose literal job description involves slamming his body into 250-pound super athletes on a weekly basis. So we're going to explore this wild dichotomy together. We're going to trace his steps from the glitz and glamour straight into the grueling offseason preparation, and finally, we'll dig deep into the trenches to understand the psychology required to just survive, let alone thrive in the NFL. Get ready, because this is a truly fascinating look behind the curtain of modern football royalty.
So, we kick things off at what was undeniably the ultimate pop culture event of the summer. I am talking about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift's wedding at Madison Square Garden in New York City. Now, I really want you to picture this. It is an incredibly exclusive, high-profile event packed to the absolute rafters with global icons. Kittle and his family, his wife Claire, his parents Bruce and Jan, and his mother-in-law Shelley were all invited. And why were they invited? Because they had hit it off with Taylor Swift at Tight End University the previous year. Just a casual connection, right? And there's Kittle's mom, Jan, who is completely, and I mean completely, unfazed by the insane environment around her. She's just walking right up to random A-list celebrities and using this brilliant, unbelievably wholesome icebreaker. She literally goes up to them and says, "Do you watch football? My son's George Kittle. He plays for the Niners." I mean, how amazing is that? Kittle himself actually crowned his mom the MVP of the entire wedding for doing this. It is genuinely wild to think about the grounded, family-first reality of the Kittle clan colliding head-on with an environment that most of us can barely even imagine. It's just that pure Midwest authenticity shining right through the incredibly bright lights of Madison Square Garden, proving that no matter how famous the guest list is, a proud mom is always going to be a proud mom.
And speaking of that guest list, you guys, the sheer volume of star power at this event was absolutely staggering. We are talking about genuine, undeniable Hollywood heavyweights in every direction you looked. Now, George Kittle, who, let's remember, is a massive star in his own right, completely admitted to having total fanboy moments at this wedding. I mean, he grew up watching Tom Cruise movies with his dad, and suddenly he and his father are standing there face to face saying, "Hello, Tom Cruise, it's great to meet you." Just wild. Then you have Adam Sandler in the mix, who apparently delivered a speech that had Kittle just absolutely giggling in his seat. It was apparently absolute vintage Sandler, just crushing it at the reception. But the kicker, the absolutely craziest part, Brad Pitt. Kittle has been a massive fan of the Ocean's 11 movies since he was a kid, and he somehow ends up chatting with Pitt. Which is funny because, by the way, Brad Pitt is the idol of Kittle's head coach, Kyle Shanahan, all because of his role as Tyler Durden in Fight Club. So Kittle and his parents just casually stood there talking with Brad Pitt for 15 whole minutes. 15 minutes. It really highlights how, for just a few hours, the terrifying physical world of the NFL completely faded away, replaced by casual banter with the guys who literally headlined our summer blockbusters. But of course, George Kittle wouldn't be George Kittle if he didn't bring his own unique brand of chaos to the party, right? We're talking midnight outfit changes into Dumb and Dumber tuxedos. You really have to visualize this to fully appreciate it. You are at an elegant, ultra-high society wedding in Madison Square Garden. Midnight rolls around, and Kittle, along with his fellow tight end Robert Tonyan, decides it's time to execute a wardrobe change. So they head backstage and slip into the iconic, brightly colored, absolutely ridiculous tuxedos from the movie Dumb and Dumber. Kittle noted that he was invited to this wedding specifically to bring vibes and party, and let me tell you, he took that responsibility very seriously. The very first people they ran into after changing were the bride and groom themselves, Taylor and Travis, who just immediately broke out laughing. And how exactly did Kittle fuel this late-night comedic fashion show? With as many light beers as he could possibly get his massive hands on. He estimated putting away anywhere from 10 to 25 of them over the course of the night, so think about that. He might be one of the most fearsome blockers in all of professional football, but at midnight, at the wedding of the century, he's just a guy in a bright orange tuxedo drinking light beer and trying to make his friends laugh.
Now, as much fun as that off-season can be, the pivot every single NFL player has to make is incredibly jarring. Literally, 1 minute you're doing midnight outfit changes and rubbing elbows with A-listers at MSG, and the very next you are strapped to an anti-gravity treadmill for utterly exhausting rehab. You see, Kittle was actually coming off surgery on his Achilles. So going from the glitz of the Swift-Kelce wedding back to the reality of his profession requires this intense, visceral, mental, and physical shift. You are literally trading champagne for sweat. While the rest of the world is focused on the pop culture spectacle of the wedding, Kittle is isolated on an Alter-G treadmill. He's in there jogging at 9 miles per hour at 100% of his body weight, pushing through grueling jumping series and doing heavily resisted marching exercises. And all of this is just to get back onto the field in cleats. The celebrity lifestyle? That is a fleeting vacation, but the gridiron grind, that is the permanent reality. It's this relentless, grueling, largely unseen physical therapy that actually pays for the ticket to Madison Square Garden in the first place. You simply cannot survive in the NFL without embracing that physical grind just as passionately, if not more so, than the parties.
And you know that unmatched football work ethic? It doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's actually fiercely communal. And that dedication births something entirely unique in the football world. Tight End University, or Tight End U as they call it. It started so organically. It was just the end of a season, and there was this casual conversation in Nashville between Kittle and veteran tight end Greg Olsen. Kittle was already training with about 7 to 10 guys, and he just asked Olsen, who was right on the verge of retiring, to come down and watch some film. The idea was just so the younger guys could learn from a master. They pitched the idea to their marketing team, expecting maybe, 20 guys to show up for a small summit. But word got out. Oh, did word get out. By year 1, it exploded. They had 50 to 60 tight ends crammed into Lipscomb High School in Nashville. It was intimate, it was intense, and it was entirely focused on elevating the position. Fast forward to the recent summits, and it has expanded so much that they are now bringing in fullbacks like Kyle Juszczyk to teach the absolute nuances of the game. It's a masterclass co-founded by Kittle, Kelce, and Olsen that transformed what was basically an off-season hangout into the premier educational summit for the league's most demanding position.
Having a guy like Kyle Juszczyk at tight end U really opens our eyes to the sheer complexity of modern NFL offenses. I mean, take a look at what Juszczyk, the 49ers fullback, is often asked to do on just a single standard play. He isn't just running in a straight line, okay? First, he has to bump a defender. Then he has to immediately dash across the entire formation. After that, he has to counter back against the grain and then somehow dig out a massive 3-technique defensive tackle. And on top of all that, he basically acts as the on-field fixer. What does that mean? Well, if an offensive tackle accidentally picks up the wrong guy, Juszczyk has to process that mistake in real time, replace the tackle, and pick up the missed block so the play doesn't instantly blow up. Kittle actually jokes that it's a really good thing Juszczyk went to Harvard because his neurons are somehow still firing fast enough to process all this chaos in a fraction of a second. Playing a hybrid tight end or fullback role today isn't just about brute strength. It requires elite, split-second mental processing to navigate an offense that is essentially a high-speed game of physical chess. It's mind-blowing when you break it down like that.
But look, before you can process complex NFL playbooks, you have to have the foundational mindset, and that mindset is forged in college. And there is a number that is a mind-blowing testament to positional dominance: 15. At the University of Iowa, where George Kittle played his college ball, an insane 15 out of 18 starting tight ends under head coach Kirk Ferentz have gone on to make an NFL roster, at least at the practice squad level. I really need you to let that sink in for a second. 15 out of 18. If you start a tight end for Iowa, your statistical probability of reaching the NFL is just staggering. Kittle himself calls it a 99% success rate when he's talking to high school recruits. When you, as a fan, watch the NFL draft, you really need to pay attention when a team drafts an Iowa tight end. Those teams know exactly what they are getting. Because Iowa isn't just recruiting great athletes, they are literally manufacturing a very specific type of football player in a laboratory of pure grit. They are instilling a selfless, physical baseline that NFL general managers absolutely salivate over. They aren't getting a diva wide receiver trapped in a bigger body. They are getting a hardened football soldier who inherently understands the dirty work required to win games.
And how exactly does Iowa forge that specific mindset? Well, it starts on day 1. During Kittle's very first summer workout at the university, a coach looked him dead in the eye and delivered a very harsh ultimatum. He said, "If you don't learn how to run block, you'll never play here." That's it. At Iowa, it absolutely does not matter if you have the softest hands in the entire country, or if you run the crispest routes anyone has ever seen. If you refuse to stick your face into a defender and block in the run game, you will ride the bench. Period. And this was a massive, massive reality check for Kittle. He arrived on campus as a 6'2", 200-pound athlete. He wasn't a monster yet. He actually had to ride the bench for 3 long years. Over that time, he eventually grew 2 inches and packed on 60 pounds of muscle just to get on the field. This mandate, block or sit, forces every single tight end in the program to become an unselfish, two-way player. Your primary goal is no longer about how many catches you get. It's about what you can do to physically dominate the man across from you for the betterment of the team. And honestly, this is the exact philosophy that forged Kittle's famously aggressive, almost reckless playing style that we all love to watch on Sundays.
Which brings us to the really fascinating psychology of a premier NFL tight end. It's this wild contrast between the finesse of catching uncontested touchdowns and the sheer violence of pancaking defensive backs. Now, Kittle is completely honest about this. At this point in his career, he openly admits that catching an easy, uncontested touchdown is fantastic. I mean, there's no tackling, there's no pain, it's just a clean, easy 6 points for the team. But, and this is where that Iowa conditioning really shines through, he confesses that there is a deeply satisfying, incredibly violent joy in perfectly flat-backing a defender. He describes the sheer thrill of hitting a guy so perfectly that you literally hear the breath leave their lungs, and then hearing them curse themselves out as they scrape themselves off the turf. Kittle specifically loves getting his hands on defensive backs. Why? Because those are the exact same guys who will dive at a tight end's knees to tackle them over the middle. So when the tables are turned and he gets to be the one delivering the punishment, oh, he absolutely relishes it. To be great, you have to have the finesse to catch a delicate pass in the back of the end zone and the primal aggression to physically humiliate another grown man on a run play. It is a crazy balance. And believe me, you absolutely need that violent, fearless mindset when you look at the absolute genetic freaks playing defense in the NFL today. It actually prompted Cleveland Browns offensive lineman Joel Bitonio to look at Kittle during a joint practice and ask a very serious question. Can you believe we're the same species? He was pointing across the practice field at a shirtless Myles Garrett. Listen, when you are tasked with blocking edge rushers like Myles Garrett or interior wrecking balls like Aaron Donald, you are dealing with men who genuinely seem to defy the laws of physics. Kittle describes these guys as being the closest things to aliens he's ever seen on a football field. They are 270-plus pounds, but somehow possess cat-like reflexes and the ability to bend around corners in ways the human body simply shouldn't be able to do. The margin for error when facing them is exactly zero. If you hesitate for a millisecond, or if you lack that sheer, unadulterated aggression we just talked about, these guys will not just beat you on the play, they will completely ruin your team's entire game plan. You have to somehow match their physical freakishness with a level of intensity and tactical precision just to survive the snap. It's terrifying. But you know, the NFL isn't just populated by terrifying edge rushers. The league is full of incredibly unique characters who blend elite, dominant skills with completely surprising off-field hobbies. Let's take a look at Kittle's new teammate Mike Evans, for example. On the field, the guy is an absolute terror. We are talking about a guy who scored 5 red zone touchdowns in a single practice. He is an incredibly savvy route runner who knows exactly how to manipulate a defender's leverage to pop wide open. But off the field, this massive, dominant receiver is an absolute enigma because he happens to be a die-hard Harry Potter trivia master. Seriously. Evans has read the books multiple times, which in itself surprised a lot of his teammates, and he loves to randomly walk up to guys in the locker room and quiz them on really obscure facts. For instance, he'll just corner someone and ask, "Who was the potions master in Book 3? Spoiler alert, in case you were wondering, it was Snape. It's exactly this kind of detail that makes an NFL locker room so fascinating. You have a guy who makes his living aggressively out-muscling defenders in the end zone, spending his downtime aggressively quizzing his peers on the faculty of Hogwarts. It's a brilliant reminder that right behind the face masks are some truly eclectic and hilarious personalities. Now, navigating this crazy league of aliens and Harry Potter enthusiasts all starts with the draft. And Kittle's entry into the NFL was remarkably quiet compared to his current superstar status. I mean, just think about this for a second. He had absolutely zero in-person combine meetings. Zero. While guys like his college roommate had 32 formal sit-downs lined up with teams, Kittle literally flipped over his schedule card and saw a completely blank slate. He jokes now that teams already knew exactly what an Iowa tight end was. A guy who loves football, blocks incredibly hard, and brings great energy. So they didn't even feel the need to waste time interviewing him or making him do all those bizarre psychological puzzles they do at the combine. Then, completely out of nowhere, his phone rings. And it's 49ers brass John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan calling from Santa Clara to draft him. He actually thought he was going to be picked by the Seattle Seahawks right before that call came in. So Kittle's journey wasn't heavily hyped or deeply analyzed in war rooms for months. He slipped completely under the radar of almost everyone, right into the lap of a coaching staff that perfectly understood how to weaponize his very specific skill set.
But flying under the radar certainly doesn't spare you from the brutal reality check of actually stepping onto an NFL field for the first time. As a rookie, Kittle's welcome to the NFL moments came incredibly fast, and they were frankly incredibly humbling. His very first regular season game was against the Carolina Panthers. Kittle recalls walking out for warm-ups at Levi's Stadium and looking into the tunnel to see Panthers quarterback Cam Newton. Newton was just standing there at 6'6" and 250 pounds of solid muscle, and Kittle was just awestruck. He remembers thinking to himself, "I'm supposed to block for guys like you, and you could just kill me." The intimidation was very, very real, and it only got worse when the actual game started. In one of his first plays, he was tasked with a one-on-one pass protection assignment against legendary pass rusher Julius Peppers. This is a guy Kittle literally grew up playing as in Madden 2006. And what happened? Peppers effortlessly grabbed the rookie and just tossed him to the turf like he weighed nothing. Kittle was out there terrified, trying his hardest just to not soil his pants while facing his childhood video game heroes in real life. It is the absolute ultimate trial by fire.
However, as intense as those on-field lessons were, his ultimate rookie humbling actually happened completely off the field. This is a great story. During OTAs, the rookies and equipment staff would usually hit up a local bar called Cartoons for Thursday night karaoke. Veteran left tackle Joe Staley, who is a massive figure both in literal size and in team status, was a regular there and an absolute karaoke legend. One night, Kittle is in the restroom, just your typical rundown dive bar bathroom with rusty doors. He's in a stall, and another rookie is in the stall right next to him. Suddenly, out of nowhere, they hear a massive crash. Joe Staley had literally kicked the bathroom door off its hinges, walked right in, and announced to the room, "What do you guys got to lose? I gotta go. Get out or move over." Kittle, who is absolutely terrified of the 10-year veteran, immediately squeaked out, "I'll move over, Mr. Joe Staley." You can be an incredibly tough, highly drafted college athlete, but when a legendary veteran decides he needs the bathroom right now, you learn your place in the NFL pecking order very, very quickly.
Which brings us to a final, provocative question that really ties this whole explainer together. How much more will the tight end position command the cultural zeitgeist? We've seen George Kittle go from drinking light beers in a Dumb and Dumber tuxedo at the wedding of the century, to mastering a Harvard-level playbook, to violently blocking genetic freaks of nature on the gridiron. The tight end was once the unsung, dirty work position of the football field. It was the position for guys who just put their heads down and worked. Now, thanks to the massive personalities of guys like Kittle and Travis Kelce and the strategic evolution of the game utilizing multiple tight end sets to absolutely break defenses, the position is front and center in pop culture. When you watch these guys on Sundays now, I really want you to remember the incredible duality of their lives. The modern NFL tight end is the ultimate paradox. They are gridiron grinders and they are Hollywood heavyweights all rolled into one. And it just leaves us wondering, what limits are left for these guys to shatter next? Thanks for joining me on this explainer today. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next one.